I was heading down to Portugal to test some subsurface lures we had been working on over the winter time. It had unfortunately coincided with a major storm causing bad weather conditions all across Europe. I was also over to meet family, so I decided to make the best of it and just get out and fish when possible and try and keep safe. I didn't see not one fisherman during all the days I fished, and guess they were waiting for calmer conditions. But looking at the wind guru, waiting wouldn't be an option. The forecast over the next week was for heavy winds, rain and waves ranging between 3.7 and 7.8 meters. So after landing, I headed straight to the west coast to get some fishing in before the heavy winds hit. The waves were already big, with over 3 meter plus sets coming through. You really have to be careful in these conditions and never take your eye off it or turn your back on the ocean. To make matters worse, there was a biting east wind, which made getting into the wetsuit that much more uncomfortable. Well, the conditions were far from ideal, and I had to wait between sets to even get a cast in. So after a few freezing hours casting with no luck, I headed home. The next day the swell was still big, but had definitely dropped quite a bit. I headed again for the most sheltered spots that could handle some swell. This day turned out to be the smallest waves of the trip. Fortunately, there were some nice lulls between the sets, and this looked much more like it. The fishing was very slow, and suddenly I hooked into what felt like a solid bass. It wasn't easy around the rocks with the strong currents, but I knew the spot well and had put on some very strong leader in anticipation. I was fortunate enough to fight and land the fish between sets, which made it a lot easier getting it out for a photo. The bass weighed in at 11.2 pounds, and I was satisfied that if I didn't see another fish the rest of the week, this would make it all worthwhile.
That's pretty good because the conditions are hard, it's a big swell and it's only going to get bigger, so just happy I got one before it gets too big.
Over the next few days the storm hit, with huge waves, rain and winds, which I expected to discolour the water, making fishing impossible. The south coast had turned out to be a brown colour and was unfishable with lures, which was a shame as I'd had the idea to go and fish some of the estuaries. But to my surprise, the water on the west coast had remained a perfect blue colour. The waves were still big, but at least it was fishable in a few spots. Over the next couple of days, I had a few more opportunities to fish and see if I could find some more bass.
Water's a beautiful colour. It's big waves, but a big swell out there, but still it's got great water clarity, so fish will be able to see it. And in here it's a lot of protection, so there'll be smaller fish in here and hopefully bass coming in looking for them.
I was here to test the lures and looking to develop something that could cast a good distance and be retrieved slow or fast over shallow rocks just below the surface.
You can also use small taps of the rod tip whilst you're winding to create that injured bait fish look or fleeing fish.
I've personally found over the years that bass love something that looks in trouble with an erratic, fleeing fish or injured fish kind of action. It always helps to test your lure in close where you can see it well. That way you can work on how you want to present the lure and get a good feel for it. The Enticer subsurface that I was testing could be used with small tweaks of the rod tip or more sweeping pulls depending on what kind of action you was looking for.
There's not many places to fish today, that's for sure, and tomorrow there'll be none. Massive swell coming. Let's make the most of it today. It's kind of a natural gutter here. There's some rocks out there, and it's quite a bit deeper in here, so the waves don't break heavy. So you can get fish sitting in here.
In these heavy kind of conditions, you need to find spots that offer some protection for the bass, where you can imagine they would patrol through in search of food, without too much extreme currents and water movement. It wasn't going to be easy this week, and there was some more swell on the way. During the next stormy weather days, I popped into my local tackle shop to pick up a few things. I was disappointed to hear that this year's bass fishing was again slow like the previous year. I have noticed a steady decline in the number of bass around over the last 20 years, but I guess it's the same story the world over. After the storm passed, I tried another old spot I knew which could handle big swell. There were some strong waves coming through, but beyond the shore break it was deeper and certainly fishable. I persevered in the strong wind and rain, but decided to leave when a big thunder and lightning storm started to approach, and I knew how dodgy it would be holding the rod in my hands. Fortunately, it was a long hike up the cliff, and by the time I got to the top, it had passed over, and I decided to head down another spot further along that had what looked like a nice deep channel on the inside. This spot looked great considering the weather conditions, but it was really catching the wind which made casting and retrieving a bit of a mission, especially being so high up. But there was one good advantage to being about 4 to 5 meters above the water, and that was the great vantage point I had looking down. I really felt it was possible to catch here, and then I saw a sight I was hoping for. I spotted a big bass following my lure. The wind was dragging my lure a little bit, but I managed to get out most of the slack in the line and then give it a few tweaks of the rod tip, giving the lure that injured fleeing fish look. The bass slammed into the lure and I was on again. wasn't an easy spot to land a big fish, and the swell made it tricky. Eventually the fish was washed up against the rocks in an area I was unable to reach it. This meant I had to bring the fish back through some rocks without touching the line and try and bring it up on the other side. It's always vital to maintain good tension on your line, as it's easy to lose a bass at this point. The hook can make a hole where it's been caught and then easily fall out if there's any slack line. Fortunately, I managed to bring the bass around and use the waves to wash it up against a rock whilst I climbed down to grab the leader between sets. I was praying that it wouldn't come unhooked or the line catch on a rock. It was a big relief to finally land the bass. Fishing alone is always more of a challenge, especially when you've got to land a fish, but it's very rewarding when it works out. As the tide went down, I moved further down to the rocks and fished some more. I love fishing the dropping tide where bass can be waiting to ambush smaller fish on their way back out.
Next spot.
But that was it for this trip, although I was already looking forward to the next trip down with hopefully much better conditions. I had started the week out with a nice 11.2 pound bass, and was fortunate enough to end the trip with a big one weighing in at 12.3 pound. I would definitely be going back home satisfied, and also that the lure I came to test not only looked good in the trials, but worked a treat in these challenging conditions. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe and like button and make a comment. Look out for more fishing films coming very soon. Cheers.